to remember you have the light. It's there. It's always there for you. It's never going to go away. Even if you think it's gone, it's always there. So you always have that within you. Always connect with God's source. And then I would also say, it's so important to have this self acceptance of yourself and understand that you can constantly change. You are always evolving. You may define yourself this way one day and another way another day. And you might be like, wait, I'm not supposed to jump around like that. Yeah, you can, because nobody's stopping you. And that all comes with flow. It's as you flow through life, you will notice those changes within yourself and you'll start to accept those changes within yourself and hopefully find that light.
Hello, hello, and welcome back to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser, and this woman is a soul trying to have a human experience as a mom, a wife, and really just being her authentic self. Our guest this week is Sheena Nolin. In the fall of 2022, she had a gradual spiritual awakening. When she started journaling and asking leading questions, she believes that she has been talking to her very own spirit team. Since then, she has used her journey to connect with God, remember and rediscover who she is, heal her past, and use what she has learned on this path to teach and help others do the same. She has a remarkable TikTok channel, The Uncensored Soul, and podcast. You must follow her there. That is how I found Sheena. I was scrolling through TikTok and she appeared on my For You page. And God, everything that she said resonated with my soul. And I just reached out and I was so excited that she said yes, because you guys are going to love this conversation. So Sheena, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
You. Oh, I got chills. I'm so excited.
Everything is always spiritually aligned. I'm getting chills too. I want to talk about your spiritual journey. So let's go back. This is the Fearless Female Journey. How did yours begin?
Yeah, it's kind of silly. It's gonna come off really silly at first. So, my daughter, who is 7, was struggling with a medical issue that just would not go away. And, I just started thinking like, "What's wrong? What's going on? How do I fix this?" Like, as a mom, you struggle and you're just like, "I wanna help my kid, and I don't know how to help my kid." And one day I found myself in my room and I saw a stack of brand new notebooks, and I was like, I'm just gonna write about this." And so I started just writing and letting kind of the stress of the frustrations of all of that just come out. And it was as though like as I wrote, the answers were coming in. And so
Mm.
I would like write down these questions like, why is this happening? And then I'd wait a second and then all of a sudden something would come. And so when I say this started out silly, it's because it was all about poop. um, my, my
Poop.
daughter,
Hey, we all poop. We all do it. I love conversations about poop.
yeah, she part of her medical issue, which is now completely healed, I'll say, but
Oh.
part of her medical issue was, constipation issues, and as I was journaling, that's when it hit me, like, "Okay, constipation, what does that mean spiritually?" And so I started
Mm.
thinking more about it, and I was like, "Well, that's holding stuff in, right?"
Yes.
And so I started kind of backtracking in her life, almost doing shadow work with her. And I was just like, okay, so where in her life did she kind of stall and decided to start holding things in? Because she's also extremely shy and had a hard time just talking to people.
Mhm.
Um, but that all like that's a whole other story in itself. But either way, what happened was I was like, wow, I really liked writing that and kind of getting answers that way. So I continued it. So every day I made it a point to go to my room, get to a quiet headspace, and just start journaling some more. And I started learning, hey, I can answer questions about myself. I can start learning about myself more by doing this. And so I just continued to do it, writing all the time. And I would specifically ask questions in my writing. Why am I this way? Why does this bug me so much? Why is this happening? And then I just wait and I just would get the answers. It was like massive download of information would flow in so fast. And I'm like
Mhm.
trying to keep up writing it all down, and that was the fall of 22. Um, and so that's why I say it was more of a gradual awakening because as I was doing it, day in, day out, I started realizing things. And like when you have that first awakening moment and you're like, wait a second, this is not all it has been. Like
Yeah.
there's more here. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was slow. It wasn't like a bam. Like I just I had to kind of flow with it with my journaling practice.
What was
And
your
so
belief system before you started journaling? Like, what was it that you grew up with believing?
I grew up Catholic, still believe in God, all of that. But I did not think about, I mean, I had always kind of dabbled with the whole like talking to psychic mediums and things like that, but I never knew that I could have conversations directly with like God, source, like that.
Yeah.
So I grew up believing there is this God who is judging us and he's watching you and you better be good.
Yeah.
And I've had a complete shift on my definition of who God is as a result of this awakening.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I grew up Catholic too, and in the Catholic religion, I remember being taught that you have to talk to the priest to be able to get your sins forgiven, and there was a lot of fear base in the Catholic religion, from what I remember. It was like you can't do this. God is always watching you. You're going to go to hell if you don't do this and do that.
Mhm,
I personally, my journey to rediscovering who we are and what God is when my father passed away. And, as a Catholic growing up, like you were taught that if you were a sinner, you go straight to hell. And my dad was an alcoholic and he died because of liver failure. And I remember that first night thinking, there's no way that my father is being tortured for eternity in a place called hell. And that's where I started to ask the questions like, God, where did he really go? Because it was weird to see my dad in the hospital bed, like fully there and then completely like it was just a vessel that
right,
was used to be his body, and the soul was no longer there. And so I questioned, where did he go? And there
mhm,
were so many times where I had these amazing dreams where I saw him in this beautiful garden and I could see him in the distance. And it like I think about like Avatar, where it was just like these beautiful colors that we can't even, describe here. And he would be far in the distance going, Estoy bien, no te preocupes de mí.
oh,
Like, I'm
yes,
fine, you know what I mean? And
yes,
there's been one time where he actually came and visited me, and I have been wrestling with the idea, like, because I did grow up in the same type of like, you don't talk to mediums, you don't talk to psychics, reincarnation, that
right,
doesn't
yep,
exist. All these different things that I was taught not to do. And it was like, oh, brujeria, don't even get near it,
mhm,
you're gonna go to the devil and the demons are gonna get you. So like I was always really afraid of all of that. And because of my father's death, I went down the rabbit hole of near death experiences. And the more that I listened to people who have actually crossed over and come back, it's like we have it all wrong.
mhm,
God is this unconditional, loving entity that wants to give us love and abundance and the answers. I love that you started to get the answers of what you were looking for and downloading it and not being afraid or even questioning. There's a whole book called Conversations with God. you know, like it's like we are allowed to have conversations with God, and I believe that we are all fragments of the light source, the divine God universe. Like I always tell people, you can call it whatever you want. It does have a sense of humor, like your whole journal started with talking about poo. You
yes.
know what I mean? It has a sense of humor. And so I personally love this rediscovering of yourself. So can you tell us a little bit more of like some of the conversations you've been having and recognizing that it's a spirit team? And also like when you first started having these conversations, did you tell anybody? Oh, it's 11:11. Did you tell anybody or were you afraid to tell people what was actually happening?
Um, so I will first say, you mentioning conversations with God is so synchronous because I actually wrote that down right in front of me, Conversations with God, because that book was life-changing for me in my whole how I relate to God. So it's just wild that you brought that up. That's an amazing, amazing book. Um, but yeah, so I don't for me, the whole practice of, like, journaling and having these conversations, for the first part, I just kinda kept it to myself because I was like, "This is my own personal conversations, right? Like private AB conversations, like nobody needs to know what I'm talking about. But as I started to kind of talk more with like different people in the spiritual community, I've been to retreats and things like that. I would feel comfortable speaking about it and saying like, "Oh yeah, like I get messages all the time." And then you start hearing people say like, "Oh, I got these downloads." And I'm like, "Oh, I think that's what was happening to me too." And so like you start having those conversations. I don't feel like nervous or scared about telling people. I tell people, all my friends all the time, even if they're not spiritual at all, like, "Oh yeah, like I got this message." And they and whether they think of that I'm nuts or not, like I'm just like, "Oh, whatever, like this is me and this is the journey I'm on." I don't know, it's just been such an incredible evolution of conversation. So like I said in the beginning, it was a lot of like, why is this happening to my daughter and why is this happening to me? A lot of it was shadow work and I didn't even know what shadow work was at the time, where I was like, why am I so triggered by this? Why is this
Mhm.
bothering me so much? And a lot of it was around friendships and relationships and like little things that would happen in my like girl friendships and group chats, and I'd be like so triggered and upset, like why am I so stressed out about this? And then I would turn to my journaling because I knew that's how I could connect with my spirit team. And I was like, tell me, you guys need to help me out here. Like,
Mhm.
help me solve this because I don't like feeling this way. And they came through, like, they gave me the messages that kind of helped me work through it. And it was not a quick, easy process because even when the message came through, like, you need to do this, you need to stop doing this, I will know my spirit team is very much like me in terms of they are like straight to the straightforward, straight to the point. They're like, "Girl, listen." Like they talk to me like that. So they'd say that they'd be like, "Listen, you're having this problem because this." And so the way it's kind of evolved into this like really like these are my best friends, soul friends, whatever you want to call them, because like now we converse just like I'm like me and you are talking right
Yeah.
now.
That's
And
incredible. I would love to have these conversations with my spirit team. But I have you ever read the book Journey of Souls?
no.
Okay, so because I'm telling you, I have been down this rabbit hole of near death experiences. I am so excited about the other side. I used to be afraid of death, but I'm not.
Mhm.
And this book came across my TikTok, and some guy talked about, Journey of Souls. So I read the book, and they do talk about how we have a spirit team, we have a soul team, and we make our plan when we decide to come back to earth, this dimension, which is basically earth school. We're learning to grow and evolve and become bigger and better spirits and souls. And so we have this spirit team. This is what the book says. And what the book is about is this psychologist who, or a therapist who kind of puts people under, he hypnotizes them and then asks them to go back. And a lot of them go back to the point where they were in, I guess you could call it heaven, whatever, where they decided they're going to come back and they're going to learn. And you make these connections with other souls and you tell them, hey, I'm going to go back. Or you can come back as my daughter, or you can come back as my son, or you could be my soulmate. And we'll meet when we're 30 years old. And you could even give each other clues, like you'll know me because I'm wearing, the red bandana or something. And then, because I think about my experience with my husband when I first met him, when we kissed, I kid you not, it was an electrical kiss. And I jumped off the couch and I was like, "What was that?" Because I was 37, 35 by the time I met him. So I had kissed a lot of guys. So, and I
Mhm.
never felt that electrical like feeling. And I still to this day know that like we were meant to be together. Our souls were meant to meet so that we can, do amazing things together. But I have been down that path where I'm just like, I wanna know more. I wanna know more, and I ask questions too. I don't get an audible. I wish I did. I wish I got a really cool little download, but I get like spiritual signs, whether
Mm.
it's a yellow butterfly or I get, three doves will go, I mean, what is a random thing that like three doves, or I get dreams, very vivid dreams. And before I used to question, like, maybe it's just a coincidence, like even when I would tell my family, like, oh, I had a dream about dad and he came to visit me and it was so real, and they would tell me, "Oh, it's just a dream."
Mhm.
That's not reality, and so for me, like I would question these things and I would second guess myself, but now I'm really leaning into my intuition and trusting that this is real. That there
Yeah.
is a spirit side to us. that there is a soul side to us, that we're more than just this meat suit. We're more than
Mhm.
just this 3D reality. And I think that I love that TikTok is like opening up people's, because I love Instagram, but I feel like people aren't real on Instagram. Feel like people are more readily able to talk about things on TikTok than they are on Instagram. And I've just met some of the most incredible humans like you who are just like, this is my reality. And you're not like shying away from that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and you mentioned, finding more people like this on TikTok. I agree, like, I've met some amazing people on TikTok, and it's just such a nice confirmation, to hear people saying the exact same things that I'm either thinking or saying myself. It's just
Hmm.
like a nice, like, I'm not the only one thinking this. Like, there are other people who believe in the same things that I do. It's just such a community feel.
It is. So going back to earlier when you were saying that you were working on your shadows, can you explain to the audience who's probably never heard of shadow work or doesn't understand what it means to work on your shadows?
Yeah, so shadow work is where you are essentially looking at the shadow side of yourself, which is the stuff that you've kind of pushed away. You've suppressed it either consciously or subconsciously, and it's your innermost being, right? It's the side of you that comes out when you're triggered that you don't even realize why it's happening. You're just like, I'm upset about this, right? And shadow work is every time the best way to do it is that every time you are triggered by something, something makes you mad or upset or whatever, you need to be self aware enough in that moment to say, oh, wait, I'm having one of those things, one of those moments, and I need to figure out why. Like, why am I feeling this way? And then you kind of go back and you do like a assessment of your life and try to think like, when's the last time I felt this way? And when's the time before that I felt this way? Till you get to that root, like that core moment that really nailed it in for you. And then you start working through that and healing that and trying to understand how that moment in your life, that traumatic event or whatever it may be, affected you all the way up until your adulthood point in time. And it sometimes the healing is just in the acknowledgement, like, oh, hey, that is why I feel this way. And just acknowledging that, not doing anything else is the healing because you're like, okay, I got it. I understand now why I'm this way. I can kind of work through that. And I think too, that's where my spirit team kind of comes in handy because sometimes I'll get to that root and I'm like, okay, now what? And they're like, "Well, you just need to kind of address those thoughts you're having around that or them limiting beliefs you're having around that." Or they'll just point blank be at me and be like, "Girl, you're wrong. Like, this is a limiting belief. You've been thinking this way for so long, and we're trying to tell you, no, that's not it." And I think that's kind of helped build up my own personal confidence because, like, I've had a lot of, like, self-hatred
Mm,
and my spirit team over here being like, "Why? Like, you are this beautiful soul and you are so powerful. And look at all the stuff you've accomplished in your life. Like, why are you
mhm,
thinking this way?" And so, kind of just working through that and then coming out of it feeling better and you get the proof because the next time you're in a situation where you were triggered before and you aren't, you're like, wait a second, I'm not mad right now. Like, I can handle this situation. This isn't making me upset anymore. And you feel so light, like weight has been lifted off when you go through this
yes.
process.
Oh my gosh, have you seen the movie Inside Out 2 yet?
Girl, I saw it twice.
Ah, doesn't it do just like the most perfect portrayal of how we create our belief systems? I mean, if
Yes.
you're listening to this podcast and you don't have children, I don't have small children, but I went to go see the movie because I loved Inside Out 1, and I'm like we watched it, I'm sitting there, I'm like, "This is exactly what we all need to realize about ourselves," like, how you could go back and see where was the exact moment that you created the belief system that you were unworthy or not good enough or, whatever, too loud, too this, too that, and I love that your soul team said, "You're the most beautiful thing, look at what you've accomplished," and that's how we should all view ourselves. It's hard because some of us who've grown up in toxic, environments, whether we had abusive parents or abusive husbands or boyfriends or even friends, because friends can be also
Mhm.
abusive. And you create these belief systems that say, oh, I'm not a good enough friend, or I'm not, because I, like, for example, myself, like, I've had at least four people in my life, female, four friends that have written me emails saying what a horrible friend I am. And to the point where they were like, nobody will ever be your friend. Nobody will ever marry you. You're just a horrible human being. And I'm CCing everybody else so that they can't be your friends either. And I mean, that was devastating and detrimental to me and my psyche to the point where I truly believed I was an awful friend, which then created a people pleaser. And then I was like opposite trying to be like, pick me energy.
Mhm,
And then I just had to go through the shadow work, through the feelings of like what created this belief system in me that I wasn't good enough or that I wasn't worthy. And it wasn't just my friends. It like dated back to like my relationship with my mother. And so like it's this deep mother wound that I had that created the pattern with female friends, that created the pattern until I became self-aware enough to break the pattern.
mhm.
And to like, if you guys go watch Inside Out too, for those of you who are listening or watching here on YouTube, make sure to subscribe if you're watching here on YouTube. Um, to break that pattern, that belief system that, was dated back to your core. And like she said earlier, when that trigger reappears in your life, you're going to be like, oh, now I know why I feel this way. And I'm
Mhm,
not going to react in the same way that I've done in the past. And you could just
exactly.
let it float on. Just let the emotion float on. So I don't know. I truly love that movie. So, okay, so what is it that you do now? I know that you're on TikTok and you're constantly like putting out amazing videos. So if you're on TikTok, make sure you follow. For those people who are not on TikTok, you are missing out. All the good stuff's on TikTok. So what do you do now?
So I swear like I do everything. So I just a work 9 to 5 job. So I do that. I'm like a project manager. And I've got 2 young kids, so constantly busy with them. They're 7 and 4. I'm married and we have this beautiful house in, I'd say, like country subdivision.
Mhm.
It's, like, in the country, but it's a subdivision, and so we've got land, and so a lot of what I love to do is, like, gardening and homesteading and, like, getting growing herbs and trying to make herbal medicines and stuff like that, so that's been my latest, like, passion is the gardening and growing things and seeing how I can take the things that are naturally growing in my yard and creating medicinal purposes out of them, like teas and things like that, oils. Um, and then I just do this TikTok, like, the TikTok is my I can't even say passion because it feels, like, so deep, much deeper than that, like, it's just, like, my life, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't wanna say, like, TikTok is my life, but, like, the creation of the content to share with others about spirituality is my life, like, that is what I love to do. I love being able to communicate what's been happening to me and relating that to, like a life lesson, like something people can learn or, take away, and I don't know, I just love that.
So do you do channeling for people or no? Or
I
you haven't
have in the
I haven't thought of.
past. I have in the past. I've even done like oracle card readings and stuff for people. I'm completely open to it, but the thing with me is like I'm not a on the spot type person. Like I need to really like get into my meditative state and think and like just open up myself to get the messages. So it's really hard for me to just like boom, let me just tell you what your spirit's saying today. Like it's not easy for me like that.
Yeah, you have to be in that perfect meditative state. I just recently watched the
Exactly.
movie, The Source Film.org by Joe Dispenza, and
Mm,
he does a whole documentary about how the meditative state, and he even shows like I love that he is very scientific.
mm,
So he shows how the brain patterns of someone who gets into that meditative state, like where your brain is functioning, and like when you're on awake and completely in the, I believe it's the beta waves that you're just completely awake where your brain is active. But then when you get into the meditative state of theta, where your brain is active there, it's like you're almost completely shutting off the world to get to that place. And that's where you can have, where I believe the veil is thin enough for you to connect with spirit, the divine. So yeah, I could understand where you can't just be like on the spot. Okay, I'm going to tell you what your
yep,
what your
yep.
spirit team is saying. So yes. Oh,
Sometimes I feel like my brain and my soul kind of do this separation, and I think that's what happens in the theta, where like, I'll be having a conversation with somebody, and then all of a sudden this part separates from myself and then brings in stuff, and I'm like, "I gotta tell them, like, this is coming right now." So that's, like, the only time that something can come out. But other than that, speaking of that, I've had these moments recently where I'll be just, like, relaxing, and it's not until I snap back out of it that I'm realizing, "Wait a second, I think I was just, like, out of body or something," because I get this white noise sound in my mind, and it's just like a shh, and something's happening, and I'm over here, like, just zoned out, I don't know, driving or whatever, and then all of a sudden, I that stops, that white noise stops, and I'm like, "Wait a second, I think my soul was, like, over here having fun for a second while I was, like, zoned."
Yeah. That
Mhm.
is so cool. That is so cool. I had so many dreams. Have you had a lucid dream?
Yes.
Where you're dreaming and you could take control. And I have had so many of those dreams where I'm like, oh, I'm dreaming. I'm in a dream state. I can do this, And it's like, wow, this is incredible because I do believe like when we're in that dream state, we travel, we astral project and we travel
Mhm.
and we do things. And we're like, oh, when you become aware, it's even more fun. So, and I also tell people that when you're dreaming, you're also able to work on past trauma. That's why some people are like, dreaming about past exes or they're dreaming about their mom or their dad. They're like really dealing with trauma that their conscious mind can't do in reality. So if you journal at night, you could even say like, can you please to your highest self, to your spirit team, to God, the divine, like we're all one. That's another thing. It's like people are so scared to say, oh, it's my spirit team or it's my angel team or it's my, highest self. It's like we're all one. We're all fragments of the one, God, source, the divine. We are just fragments, a light. We're all light beings.
Yes.
Yes, I do believe that there's darkness. I don't know what your concept is, and I would love to hear your take. But like I believe that yes, there are dark spirits. Yes, there are demons. Yes, people can go into the wrong because it's freedom of choice. God gave us freedom of choice. But I think that you can call on anything that is of divine light and anything that is of love. And you could put a protective layer around your house. Like I always say, like I guard my house with a beautiful white light of, God. And I trust that only that is of love and light come into my house. I welcome only miracles and blessings. I only welcome, things of love and light. So if you can do that, same people could welcome all the, dark stuff, cancel, cancel, cancel for me. But you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's we're all connected. And I think it's all a vibrational frequency and of the highest frequency you can ask. But people are leveling at the bottom frequency and doing things that they shouldn't be doing.
Mhm.
Like all the stuff I don't even want to say it, you know what I mean? Like murder and all the stuff that they shouldn't be doing. But anyone has a choice of moving from there to there and being loved unconditionally by Source the Divine. I don't even know where I was going with this. But what I was trying to say is that like we are all one.
Mhm.
And I've had psychedelic experiences where I've like felt and I've known that like I'm connected to everything and everyone, including the trees, the birds, the clouds, everything is one, connected into one. So to be afraid of the downloads, or the messages, it's like if it is of love and light, then of course. Obviously, if you're getting a message to kill your son, it's like, no, like obviously that's not from love and light. And I
Right.
always tell people that if it makes you feel fear, and anxiety and stress, it's not from God.
Mhm.
Because God doesn't want you to feel that. God wants you to feel love and joy and happiness. He created this beautiful playground for us to enjoy. But a lot of us are in this negative frequency that is being like pushed into us through, I mean, we can get really political gain, all this other stuff. It's like
Yep.
causing division. I don't know. What is your take on that? That was just a stream of consciousness.
No, I loved it. I loved it because it did it made me realize, um, that I don't know if you've seen the movie Soul, which is another, I
Yes, I
think,
love
Disney
that little
Pixar.
Pixar movie. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps. I loved that movie. I loved that movie.
Yeah, and you know how in the movie when, like, the people became overtaken by fear, they got into that crazy anxiety zone and they became like that big black, I don't know what it was, shadow
Yeah.
of a thing, right? I I believe that that is kind of how we create that dark side, it's just like our own fears, our own it's
Mhm.
like the human, right? It's the human creating the fears and the stuff that society kind of presses on us and creates those demons. And
Yes.
exactly like you said, I believe that everything from God is like light and love, and there's no way that that is bringing in that fear. It's us
Mm-mm.
bringing in that fear. Um, so I'm the same. I don't put any sort of attention or focus on that side of things. And anytime I do understand and recognize that I'm experiencing like fears or anxieties or worries, that's when I go and I'm like, I need to just connect. I need to connect with source. I need to like cleanse that, right? And
Mhm.
kind of connect myself out. And I think that really does help because for me, it's that conversation with your spirit team and them saying like, "What? Why are you that crazy? Like, why are you having these fears? Why are you worrying about this?" Like, and they kind of help me through it. And speaking on that, I'll say that's been another major thing that I've noticed as a part of this awakening is my anxiety. I don't have issues with that anymore. And I've had anxiety issues since probably my early 20s, on and off, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, all of that stuff, because I was very much like type A. I needed to control everything in my life. And if something wasn't right or wasn't going right for me, I'd freak out. And sometimes I would just have anxiety attacks out of nowhere. Like I would be laying there in bed and I'd all of a sudden feel like this tightening and like this heart rate racing. And I'd turn to my husband and I'd be like, I'm not feeling good. And I don't know why. He'd be like, typical. "Oh, just tell yourself to stop." And I'm like, "No, it doesn't
You're
work
like,
that
"If
way."
it was that easy, I would."
And so I would just lay there and just like, just try to regulate myself back down. And ever since I've awakened, I don't have that anymore. And anytime I feel
Mm.
an inkling of any sort of worry or anxiety, I'm like, we're fine. We're fine because
Mhm.
we are a soul and we just need to connect to our source and we'll be perfect again. So I'm able to kind of like talk myself through that and like give myself those meditative breaths through that. And I'm like completely fine. And I'm as if that never happened. And so it's been such a beautiful evolution of myself in
Yeah.
this whole process of like trying to let go of that fear and accepting more of the love.
Yes. I love that you said that, the fear is created by us. Because like I said earlier in the podcast that I listened to so many near death experiences. Like it's for a while there, I was listening to so many that I was like, yes, God, take me now. But then I was like, okay, I need to stop listening to it because I'm wishing for death,
Mhm.
because I'm ready to go to the other side, right? And one of the TikTok or one of the videos that I watched about a near death experience, it was this woman who grew up in the Catholic Church and she was deathly afraid of going to hell. Like, because, the church really like imprints in your subconscious mind that if you do A, B, C, and D, you're going to hell, even from a little lie to doing this to doing that. And so she was always afraid that she had to be perfect. And if she wasn't perfect, she was going to go to hell. So when she did die, she went to a hell. And she was in this place of torment and everything. And she was like describing this torturous place. And then when she finally gets to this place where it was like supposedly this table with like all these demons and they were bringing in more souls, and she said that the demon was like, "It's not so busy today." And then she questioned, like, "Why isn't it so busy?" And she goes, the demon was like, "Oh, it's because it's Christmas up at Earth or whatever." And she goes, "I love Christmas." And she started singing a Christian Christmas song, like, whatever. And that the demons got all crazy. And then all of a sudden she was in heaven and she was asking God, like, "Why did you put me in hell? What did I do to like deserve such a punishment?" And he goes, "I didn't do that. You did that to
Mhm.
yourself." Like, I'm getting goosebumps even saying this. You did that to yourself. You
Right.
created your own hell. You imagined those demons. You made yourself feel not good enough and not worthy enough to be in my presence. When
Mhm.
obviously you didn't do anything to earn your place here. All you did was think of something that you loved, which was Christmas, and you
Mhm.
got here. And
Mhm.
that is something that I have just been so enamored with the idea that we don't have to do, be, earn our way to heaven. that we are just going to get there because we are the essence of him. We are, or
Right.
her, it's an entity, light
Yeah.
entity, and we're just a piece of it. And we return home when we're ready to return home.
Mhm.
I have you ever watched the movie Barbie? Have you watched Barbie?
Yeah, I keep forgetting.
Oh, okay. So I don't want to ruin too much of the movie Barbie, but in the movie Barbie, she's just like in this place of like, "Oh my god, it's so amazing here." And she's got, sleepovers with her friends and she gets to dress up and it's heaven to her, right? And then this is in the trailer where she's dancing on the dance floor and she goes, "Does anyone ever think of death?" You know? And the music stops and everyone stops dancing. And I think that's what it's like in heaven. Like it's beautiful, it's fun, it's amazing, but we want, for whatever reason, our soul yearns to feel emotion. And, here we are, we're like, I don't want to feel this pain. I don't want to feel this, crying, but we want to feel emotion. So if we're in heaven and I describe to you what it feels like to go through a heartbreak, and that anguish of like breaking your heart and all this other stuff and longing for someone and missing them, you kind of like are intoxicated by that feeling. You're like, I want to feel it. Well, the only way to feel it is to actually come to earth and like have earth school. And yet you
Mhm.
come here and we complain about all these emotions and stuff, but it's like we're all learning, growing, and evolving to being
Mhm.
better, refined souls. So I don't know. I'm again going through a tangent.
No, I love
I go through
that. I
these
love that.
left-handed tangents all the time. But yes, I think about these things all the time. And I love that you said when you're thinking about your shadow work, what is triggering? I always ask myself, what lesson am I supposed to learn here?
Mm,
Like, why are you putting me through this? What lesson am I supposed to learn here? And I
mhm.
have learned so much in my healing journey where I am thinking like, this person is triggering me. What part of me is a reflection that I have to like work on still? 'Cause
Mhm.
we all have shadows. It's the law of polarity. We have white
Yeah.
and dark in us. And people who say, "Oh no, I'm not a dark person. I would never do anything." Well, when someone hurts your child or when someone hurts you, oh, those shadows "Arr!" they come up, right? And so, you're not always going to be rainbows and sunshines. You're going to experience snakes and you're going to have triggers. It's just a part of the human experience. It's what we signed up for. It's what our soul contract is all about. And we have to enjoy the most that we can and create our heaven on earth, which is what we were supposed to do. So yes, anyways, do you have
I I wish more people would have that understanding. There's been times where I've made TikToks and I say things like, you're in control of your own reality and what you experience is from your own hand, really your own mind. And you get the people who are like, no way, like I would never wish
Mhm.
death or illness or whatever. And it's not that you're wishing that on yourself, it's more so that you're allowing that, like, fear or worry or anxiety kinda take over and create these things, but I'm the same way as you, is, like, I try to use a lot of the experiences I have as learning experiences, and I actually just had one I'm experiencing right now. I've been doing a lot over the last couple of weeks with, like, this whole worthiness and self-love, and I've always had issues with my body, my weight. I mean, I just have always said, I hate my body. I hate what it does. It doesn't work for me, whatever. And now that I'm actually starting to acknowledge that about myself instead of just like brushing it away, because nobody wants to admit that they hate themselves
Mhm.
or their body. When I finally said, I admit that I have held these beliefs about myself for so long, it was, I ended up getting myself into some poison ivy and I got poison ivy
Mm.
on my body this
Uh-huh.
week. And, instead of being, like, negative and, "Oh my god, this sucks, oh, whatever, whatever," I was like, "You know what? I get it. I get it," because I was telling whoever would listen, like, I hate my body, I hate myself. Yes, I'm working on it, but I hate it. And it's almost like, okay, so let's show you what your body can do. Let's show
Mhm.
you how you can kind of learn from this. And so, yes, like I got this poison ivy and it is itchy, but like I'm just handling it like, okay, it's a lesson. I got it. And I'm working on my self love. And so I'm actually using this as an opportunity to kind of kick that self-love gear into shift, like, I'm telling myself, "I love myself so much that my body is gonna heal this, and it's not gonna
Mm,
be an issue, and I'm not gonna struggle or feel awful about it, and we're just gonna get through it together." And it's really changed and shifted my mindset and allowed me to kind of tip the scales more onto that, like, self-love side versus the self-hatred side, and I believe that that is how you kind of, like, shift yourself and allow yourself to, like, okay, I'm aware. I'm gonna make sure that I learn from this lesson so that I can change.
yeah. I think that's a huge first step is to become aware. Because like you
Mhm.
said earlier, when people are messaging you like, I wouldn't consciously pick this. No, not consciously, but
Right.
subconsciously, there's a belief system where you are picking it.
Mhm.
And like, again, go watch the movie Inside Out too. You have these belief systems that you've created, maybe in childhood, maybe in adulthood, maybe when in a toxic relationship. And even though you are consciously like, I don't want that, subconsciously, you're still doing it. You may be talking shit about yourself every time you walk past a mirror. Or
Mhm.
maybe you see somebody at Starbucks who has better arms than you, and you're like, God, I fucking hate myself, you know?
Yeah.
Or, you don't even know that you're doing it. Like I have so many clients that come to me and they say, "Oh, I never have negative self-talk." And then within the next sentence, they're saying something negative about themselves. Even I still do that. And I have been, spiritually awakened since 2006. Like I still am working on layers and layers and layers of trauma and pain. And, I'm constantly evolving and becoming more self aware of my negative self talk and my negative thoughts. Um, but yeah, we don't consciously pick it, we subconsciously self sabotage. And,
Mhm.
I have an example of when I first met my husband, and I was so afraid of losing him because two of my family members, my sisters, lost their husbands. And so
Mhm.
they became widows at a really young age. So when I met my husband, I thought, well, there's a curse. I'm going to lose my husband too. I'm going to be a widow. Like every time he left the house, I would imagine him having a stroke or a heart attack or like getting into a car accident. And I am not lying. My husband had a heart attack in August and died on the table.
Oh.
And I told myself like I did this because I imagined it. So instead of using my imagination for the worst case scenario, I need to use my imagination for the best case scenario. And instead of imagining like doom, I need to imagine that everything's going to be fine. We're going to live until we're in our 80s and 90s and we're going to live happily ever after, and I need to stop using my imagination for the worst case scenario, which is what a lot of us do. I don't intentionally want to do it, but I have like these belief systems from my childhood, that my two sisters lost their husbands. In addition to, I watched hours upon hours of unsolved mysteries.
Yep.
2020, you know what I mean? And you're constantly reading these articles, and especially the news feeds you more articles of like the saddest stories,
Mhm.
And so then you think, oh, well, you start to read these stories and you're like, what would I do if my daughter died? What would I do if my husband died? What would I do? How would I? No, don't think of that. Think of like, what would I do if I won the lottery? What would I do if I,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? If all of a sudden I got a big windfall of miracles and blessings, what would I do if someone handed me $30,000 in cash? Like, why don't we use our imagination for the best instead of
Right.
the worst case scenario? So the most powerful tool we have is our brain. And
Mhm.
no one can go in there and I mean, yes, you can reprogram it with like negative self-talk and negative. It's what toxic people and narcissistic abusers do is they program you to believe that you're nothing. So if that works, you can actually program it to believe that you are something and that you're amazing, you're
Mhm.
worthy, and all of these things. And so, oh, I love having these conversations, Sheena.
Me too. I just feel like I learned so much from people just listening to what they have to say about the same type of stuff.
Yes. Well, I highly recommend you watch the movie Barbie because you're going to be
I
like, oh,
will.
this totally makes sense. This totally makes sense. It's funny how these movies are starting to portray the spiritual side of life.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
even Inside Out, the movie Soul, just an incredible movies to watch, and I love that our children are starting to learn, how our brain works, how our thoughts work, how our reality works, and how we have total power to create the life that we want.
For sure. I am trying my best to help my kids understand that stuff too so that they know from an early age instead of having to wait until they're 40 years old to
Yes.
figure it out.
Another book I highly recommend you read is called Dying to Be Me by Anita Murjani. And because you were talking earlier about how the negative self talk about your body, you're going to love that book. Please message me once you finish reading it because I want to hear your takes on it. But thank you again for being on the podcast. So, as
For
we
having
wrap
me.
up this episode, I always like to ask my guests, what would be your nugget of wisdom that for anyone who is struggling right now, maybe they're in the dark night of the soul and they don't know how to find the light? What would be your advice to them?
Well, to that, I would say my advice would be to remember you have the light. It's there. It's always there for you. It's never going to go away. Even if you think it's gone, it's always there. So you always have that within you. Always connect with God's source. And then I would also say, it's so important to have this self acceptance of yourself and understand that you can constantly change. You are always evolving. You may define yourself this way one day and another way another day. And you might be like, wait, I'm not supposed to jump around like that. Yeah, you can because nobody's stopping you. And that all comes with flow. It's as you flow through life, you will notice those changes within yourself and you'll start to accept those changes within yourself and hopefully find that light.
Yes. Oh, and if you're thinking, well, what's the flow? Watch the movie Soul because they explain it perfectly fine in that movie too.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again for listening to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser. If you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual mentor, you can book a free discovery call with me at www.fearlessfemale.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at fearlessfemale_coach, subscribe to my YouTube channel at fearlessfemale, or find me on TikTok. I'm under at paola.rosser. And if you love this episode, make sure you hit subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a review. I read every single review, and I truly appreciate the time you spend writing it.